Good day, and welcome to our course on how to set up Microsoft Azure File Sync end-to-end. Now, this is the product that Microsoft is now offering that will allow you to take your current file shares, push them up to the cloud, but retain the commonly used files locally on your local file servers. So we're going to run through the opening parts pretty quickly. Because they're just information. There's nothing you need to do. We're going to spend time on the step-by-step instructions on how to physically do this. And we're going to do this from dead scratch, from nothing but a plain Jane Server 2016 VM. That's all I've got running at this point. So let's go. The first thing I want to look at is pricing. And the way you get to that is to go to azure.microsoft.com/pricing, slap the enter key, and click the pricing calculator on the left. And you'll see that you have a number of options here. I want to click on storage. And you can see that a terabyte of LRS, that's the locally redundant data, will be stored at Microsoft in the Eastern US. It's file storage, here we go, for $60 a terabyte. And they also charge for moving files around. But it's not a huge amount of money. So that's one place where you can get started, so you have an idea what these things are going to cost, but you really don't know until you use it. So let's go to it. So what you want to do is go to portal.azure.com. By the way, if you don't already have an Azure account, just go to azure.microsoft.com and click the Start Free button right here. And what that'll do is create an account for you and give you a $200 and some credit, which is awesome. So let's go. Portal.azure.com. Sign in. And the very first thing you need to do is go on the left-hand side to Storage Accounts. Now, what we're going to do, I'm going to explain a couple of quick things here that you don't need to know, but you probably want to know. If something's missing from here, just go to All Resources or All Services and do a search for it. And there's way too much stuff here to look at. So say you want sync services, which is what we're going to need in a minute. There's sync services right there. And if I click this little star, it'll put it in here. Actually, well, I can do it. See this at the bottom here? It's being added. And then I can just drag it around. So I'm going to turn it off for the moment because, well, we don't need it. So boom. So this is just straight default stuff. So let's go to Storage Accounts. So here we click Create Storage Account, and this is slightly confusing, but we can get through it quite quickly. At the top here, your subscription is how are you going to pay for it. So in my case, I'm a partner, so it shows up as a Microsoft Partner Network. I get some credit for that. You will probably have it as your free subscription, or you can purchase another subscription, however, or MSDN, or whatever subscription you have is fine. If you don't have one, you just go buy one. So, but again, most people start with the free. It'll give you about $200, in Canada it's $260 free, so it's about $200 US. Resource group. I don't have a resource group, so I'm going to create a new one. And I'm going to call this, let's go with the resource group. This has to do with billing, really, and it's not important other than for you personally for tracking. So don't get too hung up on this. So I'm just going to call this Calgary, so because that's where I am, up and running. And if you put in a character that's not allowed, see the ampersand? It tells you not allowed. So sometimes it's all lowercase, sometimes it has to be uppercase, or sometimes it can't have any uppercase, so on and so forth. So you are test one, there we go. Now the storage account name, this is what it's going to show up as for this instance. Now we can just click the help. If you put your mouse over top of these eyes, they'll tell you what they are. So here, I'm just going to call this a storage account name of you are, oh, right, can't have a special character, and has to be lowercase. So you are test one storage account. Yeah, I'll just call it SA. There we go. And where do I want it to be? Now, if you're trying to figure out where these different locations actually are, we have a list of all of the Microsoft data centers and where they're actually located here on our webpage, urtech.ca. Because sometimes they're listed by region, sometimes they're listed by name, sometimes they're referred to as sites. So it can be quite confusing. So for instance, for us, I had a client that had work in Ireland, and for some reason that is listed as Northern Europe. which certainly is not something that I would have guessed. I had to look it up. That's when I generated and created this list from a couple of other Microsoft lists. Anywho, so whatever site you want, you can choose from here. So in my case, I'm going to choose Canada Central because Toronto is close for me. So let's go to, it really doesn't make any difference which one you choose unless, you know, distance is a big issue for you or you have legal issues. But in my case, I'm obviously going to choose the one that's closest to me. Okay, now performance. What this boils down to is, do you want to work off of spinning disk or off of SSDs? So if you put your mouse over the eye, you'll see it gives you some information, but that's what it boils down to. Standard is disk, and premium is SSDs. Account kind, standard storage V2, V1, or blob storage. Blob storage is not appropriate for this. You have to use V1 or V2. V1 is old and will be retired at some point soon, so generally choose V2. And replication. Most people, if you're moving from on-prem, are probably going to want to go to locally redundant storage. That, I believe, is 3 copies kept locally in the same data center. Geo-redundance is obviously just what that means, and you can go through the rest as well. And cool versus hot relates to how frequently the data is used. So cool storage is like cold storage. It's optimized for storing data that's used infrequently, and it's stored for at least 30 days, whereas hot storage is stuff that's being used all the time. So, and there's a price difference. So I'm going to choose hot because that's what most people will want. Next, how do you want the transfers to be, handled? You want them secure or whichever. You can also lock down which networks get accessed. Now this is actually an interesting point. This does not work with Azure File Sync. So do not set this to selected network. You have to leave this open to all networks. Data lake storage, again, don't worry about that. Let's move to next. Tags, this is again for billing. I'm going to call this UR Tech because I'm my own client here. I'm going to call this, what do we want to call this? We want to call this Cost Center Center 1. How's that? This is not required, it's purely optional, and it's just for you to keep track of what's going on. Review and create, it'll give you a quick summary. Yep, that all looks happy. Now it's running a validation. Validation passed, click create. And you wait a minute here. There it is, your deployment's underway. Now again, we just have to keep waiting for this to finish. You can click at the top and see the notifications of what's going on. There it is. There's our resource group. So now I can go to my storage accounts, and it's still working, but we can continue regardless. So let's go to storage accounts, and there it is. So now we go over and we click files, because that's the type of data we want to put on this, this storage. And we click the plus in the top left-hand corner for create file share. What do we want to call it? We want to call this UR Tech lowercase. Yeah, there we go. It has to be lowercase. Okay, so we're going to call this Azure Store 1. There we go. Okay, quota. I don't have a quota, by the way. As soon as you click create, it's going to default to a 500 gig quota, or 5 terabyte, I should say. And you can see that's been created. In here is where you can delete it, and you can also get access to it, which we are going to come back to with Connect in a minute. Well, we'll show that to you right now, actually. You can get to the storage simply. You can actually map a drive letter. So if you're a small business, you can map this directly right now, and you're done. You simply choose what drive letter you'd like this to be. So let's call this the M for Microsoft Drive, and you then copy that into PowerShell, and you will have an M drive. And that M drive will go out to where this data is, and you will be in business. You're done. Now, if you want to do the Azure File Sync, which is what I want to do, I want the data that I'm using frequently to be stored locally, and I want all of the old stuff to be pushed out to the cloud. I want to get through File Sync, so let's do that. So, next thing we need to do is create a sync. What you'll see here on the left, there are no sync options. So what you have to do is go to All Services, and as we showed earlier, type in Sync. And there's sync, and I'm going to set it to be a favorite right there, and I'm going to drag it up because I'd like it to be where the other one is, which is, there it is, under storage accounts. It really doesn't make any difference where you put it, but that's where I want it to be. Okay, now we have our menu in place. We need to go create an Azure File Sync. So not very challenging. You click the plus in the top left-hand corner, and you type in Azure File, and it will filter down to Azure File Sync, and it will give you an explanation of what that is. I'm just going to say create, and I'm going to call this Cal Share Sync 1. You don't have to put a number after it, but yeah, I'm going to put that in. Oh yes. There we go. Actually, you can't put a number in. So there you go. Partner network is fine. Existing work group. Yep, that's the one I just built. And you'd be silly to store it. Well, for my applications, I can't think of any reason why I would store it elsewhere than the location the data is, but there's probably some good redundancy if you're a giant enterprise. A good reason for running at a different location. Click create. And now you have in here, you can see you've got your storage account and your resource group. And if you go to your storage sync services here, you will see that it is set up. So let's click on that, and let's create a sync group. Sync group name, Cal Sync Group 1. And yes, I can use the number there. Select the storage account. Sure, I'll just use the one I already did, the one I've already got. Azure File Share, there it is. And click Create. And in a minute, it will show up. Isn't that nice? Now I just have to configure it. Well, we have to wait a minute for this to complete. But it won't take very long. And I can click Cal Sync Group. Okay, so now we have to add a server endpoint. As you can see at the top here, we have our cloud side done, but there's no servers. So that's easy enough to fix. We just simply go to our virtual machine in my case, and we say what we want to share. And to do that, we need to download an application. You can get that tool in several ways, including right from the site, or you can just download it. So I'm just going to do a search on this, and it is there it is, download Azure File Sync Agent from official Microsoft site. Click download, and you'll get the choice of versions. This is Server 2016, so that's what I'm going to download. This only works with Server 2012 R2 and newer. So if you've got 2012 R1 or 2008, you're out of luck. Okay, so it's downloaded. Let's run the install. Super easy. A little bit slower than I would have thought, but it's fine. So let's run. Next, I read those terms and conditions. Yep, that's a fine location to install it. It can be installed in that location. It just in C drive. It just can't have its data stored there. So let's click next on proxy because I don't have any. I'm perfectly happy to have it update automatically. By the way, the updates are handled automatically from Windows Update, and I would like them to be aware of any problems I'm having. So I'm going to leave both those check marks on. So while we're killing time here, the things to remember are the data folder that you're going to share needs to be on an NTFS partition. It will not work with REFS. I've tried it, and it cannot be on the C drive. Well, your operating system drive, assuming that's C. Okay, I'm going to pause this until this part's finished. It's going to take another minute or two, and I don't want you to waste your time. Okay, so this finished, and now it's going to tell me I'm missing a component. At least I believe it will. And I'm doing this on purpose so you can see the errors, so we can clear off as many of these as we go. What is that? That is the, oh, you have to have the Azure Resource Manager. Okay, so the install completed. It did a check to see if it was up to date. And now it says, oh, you need the Azure Resource Manager. So we're just going to go to here to grab it. And then we have to relaunch this. And we'll show you how to do that. Oops, wrong browser window. Boom. Paste that in. And the way you do that is actually through PowerShell. You can download it, but it's a pain. So what you want to do is right-click, go to, well, you can't do that, so go to PowerShell. Make sure you run it as an admin. Right-click, run as admin. Bingo. And this is going to come up with 2 questions. Okay, there it is. Paste that command in. And this takes, again, a little bit longer than you would expect. I thought it would be faster. So I'm going to put this on pause again so you don't have to sit and wait. All right, so there's the first prompt, and it's saying, yes, I'm going to say, yes, I want to do that. And then it's going to run for a minute and ask me again, do I want to do something else? But in my case, I'm just going to say Y for yes. Well, there we go. Okay, that came up very quickly, and I'm just going to say yes to this one as well. And you'll see at the top it'll start rolling along here. And as soon as it does that, I will pause the video so you don't have to get old watching this thing install. Okay, so that took about a minute, and it's just started running. I'm going to pause it again so you don't have to sit here and watch this install. Okay, it's been about a minute and it's still running, so I just wanted you to see how long it takes. Now, if you're doing this the easy way, you would just install this first. But I wanted you to see the errors so that you can get through this easier through your implementation if you get stuck. I'm going to pause it again, and I'll bring it back when it's done. So that finished, and now we're done. We can close that. There's no need to leave that window open. You can also get rid of this command here. If we click retry, we'll be on our way. Now, I want to show you that if you do blow this up, you can get to this manually as well. You're going to see program files, Azure Storage Sync agent. That's the updater, and the actual executable is this one right here, server registration. So let's just blow this up for fun. So I'm going to kill it, go on. Oh damn, what do I do now? Because there's no shortcuts for it. The only shortcuts are for the updater, and that's not very much fun. So no problem, just run server registration again. Okay, this takes a second, so I'm going to pause until it comes up, but it will come up. Bingo, there it is. So right back where we started. I'm not signing, well, I actually am a cloud solution provider, but I'm going to leave that alone and click sign in so you can see it. And there we go, much better. My password. And yes, it does flash a couple of times. That is normal. A little weird, but normal. And bingo, look at this. My license is being paid for through my Microsoft Partner Network. In your case, probably test group or trial. That's my resource group. And there's my sync. Register. Again. Wants to make sure you're you. Okay, this is still waiting. This does take a minute. I'm going to put you on hold again and pause. And when it's done, I'll come back. There it is. If it times out on you, by the way, just do it again. Just click retry. You don't have to click this link if you want. I will just for fun. Just click OK and clear it off. Now, when you go back to your cloud portal, add Server Endpoint. Bingo, there it is. Path. So I'm going to use Azure shares. And I'm going to do cloud tiering. I would like the disk to be 95%. Well, let's go with 95% available, which means 95% of that share will be empty, which is kind of a stupid way to do it. But you get this is just so you can see that when we copy data up, what will happen is when I copy data into that share, all of the data will be copied to the cloud, and files that are used locally, files that are used frequently will also be stored in a copy locally. So the cloud is the master, and your PC, your server, I should say, is the slave. And I only want to keep files at a maximum. If anything is older than 180 days, I just put it in the cloud. I don't need to keep it locally at all. It's probably garbage. Why clutter up my system? So let's click Create. And when we go back to the VM, okay, let's go back here. and you'll see it still says provisioning, pending. Now this pending takes some time. This is not a 2-second thing. But you can see, look, this Azure Shares just showed up. So now I can go into here and I can copy some data, and I'm going to do just that. I'm going to copy this storage file, and I'm going to create a new text file, a new folder, and I'm going to, well, let's just call this folder 1. Folder 1111. There we go. And that's a 50 meg file, and I'm going to create a new, well, that's enough, I guess. Let's just copy this a few times. And there we go. Now let's just start copying these large files, or relatively large files. And you will see that in the cloud, copy, there we go. You get the idea, so there's data there. Now, the way I can tell that the files are currently local is checking the file size. So I can right click on any of these files and click properties, and I can see that the size is 48 meg and size on disk is 48 meg. When this is done, if I check back tomorrow, so let's look at the entire folder. And by the way, yes, you can do normal sharing on this. That's not a problem to do. But when I go into this, I can see it's 1.52 gig on disk and 1.52 gig in total. Now, the key here is that because I'm doing tiering, that this will get smaller. So this will be, well, probably a lot less large tomorrow. We just have to wait for it to cycle up to the cloud. Now, let's show you a couple of things here that might be of interest. So when I click on my test VM, you can see that right now it hasn't done any syncing, but it's going to start. It will start very, very soon. And I can change these things. I can go in and say, well, I don't want it to be 95% because that's stupid. I want it to be, 10% empty. So it's got some space. Another thing is this still, and this is very, very frustrating, you can add in as many servers as you want to this. So you could have a server in France if you want that is also looking at the same share. The problem is, and I don't suggest you do that, the reason I suggest that is because it doesn't do file locking properly yet. Now, I've looked at this for more than a year since this was in beta, and it's quite frustrating that it's not there yet. So what you will see is if you open a PowerPoint file in Calgary, we'll say, and somebody else opens that same file in France, both of them will get a copy of that file, and it will get copied down to the local server, and they will be working on it, and then there will be a conflict. And it will save the conflict. I can't recall how it does it. It will not overwrite. It'll save it with a different file name, so it's quite easy to understand, but it's frustrating. So I don't suggest at this point that you use multiple servers, at least not yet, unless people are very, very unlikely to run into each other. So let's go back and take a look at a few interesting things. Let's go to the storage accounts and click on my test. And there's all kinds of cool things you can change in here. The events are kind of handy to look at. By the way, errors and problems with the sync service will show up in your event viewer, which is nice. Let's go look at the configuration. So here you can change, right? What services you want, how fast you want them to be. You can change this on the fly, whether it's locally redundant, which is way better than most people have in their office currently. Having your frequently used files stored locally, plus having everything else stored up in the cloud, is pretty great. Now, also, this will take a checkpoint every day. So every day there will be a checkpoint that you can go back at. So effectively, you've got a backup. Well, not effectively, you have a backup. Unless the entire data center goes down, Microsoft's entire data center goes down, you're good to go as far as backup for the first little while. If you're looking for annuals, that's a different matter, and I'm still working on how to figure that out. Okay, I think really the only other thing to mention is backups. And antivirus scans. If you're running a local antivirus scan or a local backup, those two products may try to pull down the files from the cloud. And if you don't have the space, so let's say you've got a local server with 1 terabyte of space and you've got 30 terabyte up in the cloud, Well, if your backup or antivirus tries to pull those files down so it can check them or back them up, that would be a very bad thing. So what you need to do is make sure that those products are set to skip offline files. If the files are offline, the antivirus shouldn't scan them and the backup shouldn't back them up by pulling them down. What it needs to do is go to the cloud and pull it down, and you need something that has an Azure file share awareness. Oh, right, one more thing I want to show you before we go is the Storage Explorer. So you can get into the Storage Explorer and it will show you in here what is in your share. Look at that. And you can click on a file and download it. I'm not going to bother. Don't want to take up your time. And one more thing is in Overview, Files, and then you expand your store and you click Connect, you will get an URL. And this again is for mapping. We discussed this briefly earlier. Yeah, you could map this so that people have a UNC path to it, your staff, and again it supports Linux and Mac OS. You can also see the snapshots, which, because we've just done this, we don't have any, but if this was tomorrow, there would be snapshots there. Okay, so that is it. If you have any questions, please get a hold of us at www.urtech.ca. Thank you. Bye-bye.